and develop its capabilities in areas such as intelligence gathering, planning, and naval and air defense.
such as intelligence gathering, planning,
As a
naval and
military
air
officer involved planning and
naval and
defense.
air defense.
As a military officer involved in the defense reforms.
Says a military officer involved in the defense reforms.
The new administration is going to be more diplomatic and polite about it.
The new administration will be more diplomatic and polite about it.
So I expect we'll get on better.
So I expect we'll get on better.
But their objectives will not change fundamentally, he says.
But their objectives will not change fundamentally, he says.
To some degree, America's aims match those of the South Korean government.
To some degree, America's aims match those of the South Korean government, which would like more say in the alliance.
At present, command of all South Korean forces
At present, command of all South Korean forces
would be handed to an American in the event of a war on the peninsula.
would be handed to an American in the event of a war on the peninsula.
This arrangement dates back to the origins of the alliance during the Korean War.
This arrangement dates back to the origins of the alliance during the Korean War,
when the South was considered unable to defend itself alone.
when South Korea was considered unable to defend itself alone
against an assault from the north. But in the early 2000s, the left of centre government of Roh Moo-hyun
But in the early 2000s, the left of center government of Roh Moo-hyun began trying to build a capacity
to take back control of the country's own forces.
to take back control of the country's own forces.
The current government, which is led by Moon Jae-in,
The current government, which is led by Moon Jae-in,
who was Roh's chief of staff,
had
hoped to complete the transfer by the end of Mr. Moon's term next year.
Had hoped to complete the transfer by the end of Mr. Moon's term next year.
But it looks unlikely that the armed forces capabilities will have improved to the degree required in time. Other aspects of the reforms are progressing faster.
Other aspects of reforms are progressing faster.
The number of troops declined to 555,000 at the end of last year.
The number of troops declined to 555,000 at the end of last year,
down from 600,000 in 2018. It is supposed to fall below 500,000 by the end of this year.
It is supposed to fall below 500,000 by the end of this year, with the bulk of the cuts made to the army.
Mandatory military service is being shortened to 18 months.
Wages for conscripts are rising sharply.
Wages for conscripts are rising sharply.
The government aims to hire more women and more civilians to work for the armed forces.
The government aims to hire more women and civilians to work for the armed forces
to help bridge the gap between soldiers and the rest of society.
to help bridge the gap between soldiers and the rest of society.
Last summer, the country launched its first military communications satellite.
Last year, the country launched its first military communications satellite.
It also secured America's approval to modify past agreements.
It also secured America's approval to modify past arrangement
to permit it to use solid fuel in the missile,
which allows them to be launched more quickly and easily.
which allows them to be launched more quickly and easily.
That should pave the way for better deterrence against the North.
That should pave the way for better deterrence against the North.
Although the South says it plans mainly to launch satellites this way.
Although the South says it plans to launch satellites mainly this way.
Defense spending rose by 8.2% in 2019.
Defense spending rose by 8.2% last year
And by 7.4% in 2020.
and by 7.4% in 2020.
This year's budget envisages an increase of 5%.
This year's budget envisages an increase of 5%.
Despite the intense competition for funds created by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Despite intense competition for funds created by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Some of the money will be misspent.
Some of the money will be misspent.
Last year, for instance, the Navy announced that it would soon build an aircraft carrier.
Last year, for example, the Navy announced that it would soon build an aircraft carrier.
A pointless trophy in the eyes of many.
A pointless trophy in the eyes of many.
It's like having a golden gun, says the defense planning officer.
It's like having a golden gun, says the defense military officer.
But the armed forces are also stocking up on drones, submarines, and anti-submarine defenses.
But the armed forces are also stocking up on drones, submarines, and anti-submarine defenses.
Among other sensible purchases. In public, Mr. Moon's administration insists.
In public, Mr. Moon's administration insists
that it is committed to peace with North Korea.
That it is committed to peace with North Korea.
And does not expect fundamental changes to the alliance with America.
And does not expect fundamental changes to the alliance with America.
The cheery language, however, masks quiet but elaborate contingency planning.
The cheery language, however, masks the quiet but elaborate contingency planning.
In case either expectation is dashed.